to Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora. I am a galactic walk-in. That means that I am not the original inhabitant of this physical human female form, and I came into this body when the original occupant was murdered, and her entire ego was destroyed, and this was all part of a satanic ritual. And, of course, I've described it in the past as having been done by directed energy transmission, a type of, like a beam of energy that caused an anoxic or the type of brain injury that is the result of lack of oxygen to the brain. So not the type of stroke where you have a blood vessel that has blood that leaks out of it and creates an injury, but where blood vessels are actually closed down and prevent critical areas of the brain from receiving blood and oxygen and nutrition. And the energy also, you could say, like burned out or tripped the circuit breakers of other aspects of the neurology of this body. So I, as the extraterrestrial presence, soon to be named Aurora, vibrated the strings of the DNA of this body in a completely new format, in a shape that they had never been vibrated before, that no strings of DNA anywhere had ever been vibrated before in this shape. And the shape is called the Flying Rainbow Lasagna. It's a lighthearted name for something that is actually a profound concept. And the concept is the shape that you transform into when you add an additional dimension, and in so doing add an additional degree of freedom to your non-physical layers of energy that comprise your non-physical body. And these non-physical layers are made of time. Like, that is the best way I can describe them. So I'm here on the radio, love my radio show, I do not complain. However, ordinarily I'm used to speaking with pictures, to drawing diagrams, and that's actually when I first came into this body, so I'm starting with the very beginning of the story, so the neurology was slightly damaged, and in being in this body, I wasn't immediately articulate as I am now. I had a great deal of difficulty expressing myself verbally through words, and did most of my self-expression through drawing pictures. I had just filled up notebooks and notebooks and notebooks of all of these line drawings. And again, I wasn't as organized as I am now. I didn't measure everything out. However, I drew all of these repetitive patterns that were my way of communicating. And I showed these to people, and I created paper models of, my concepts. And from the response, I understood that the communication was not effective. It's very similar to the beginning of the Planet of the Apes movie, the original one with Charlton Heston, where he can't use his voice because he is injured, and he's trying to communicate his ideas and the fact that he is intelligent to the beings around him. And he's pantomiming and drawing in the sand and trying to get them to understand. So I felt very much like that character. And it actually took many, many years of, you could call it rewiring my brain. And this is healing that happened on a non-physical level, like with spirit beings really helping me, and also the physical level of neuroplasticity. I didn't have that word for a long time, but I recently found it, and it's the idea that even if there are deficits or traumas to certain areas of the brain, other areas of the brain can learn to pick up the slack or perform new tasks. So I developed a way of understanding numbers. When I first came into this body, I was numerically illiterate. And that means I could not recognize numbers. Like a 3 and an 8 looked the same to me. They looked pretty much the same. And a 6 and a 9, they look pretty much the same to me. It's very much like if you were to look at, if you don't speak Japanese and you looked at Japanese kanji characters, that you would say, this just looks like pretty calligraphy. This doesn't look like anything. So that was my impression of numbers when I first came here, and for many years. It took a long time for me to create the bridges, like the neurological bridges or the integument, to be able to get around the areas that had been damaged. And I like to describe this as like a little ant, instead of walking across the flat surface of a piece of paper, growing wings and jumping off the surface of the paper and flying to wherever they need to go. So that was really how I ended up learning to use my brain effectively in this body, even with the neurological deficits. When there's a roadblock, I jump up and over. Or if I can't go linearly from point A to point B, I fold time and space so that point A and point B touch, and so that I can do all of the thinking and perceiving that I need to. And it's very clear I bring this all up as an example of the wonderful transformative qualities of the flying rainbow lasagna, and that it makes things that would appear to be impossible possible. So on the larger scale, this body did not die. This body was intended to die. It was intended to be murdered and to die and to decompose. And that's not what happened. I'm such a naughty sacrifice that I chose not to die and instead created this vibratory form with the strings of DNA of this body that allowed for continued consciousness. And there was also a force field of grace, like a very strong energy field that is divine, that was placed around every cell of my body, so that during the transition between the first moment of the flying rainbow lasagna and however long it would take for the cells to master that dance movement, so that the cells wouldn't fall apart and decompose and die. Like, it wasn't instantaneous. It was not something that instantaneously all of the cells and all of the structures started dancing in a higher dimensional format. It was a transition, and it took a long time, like at least the first 18 months that I was in this body. That was like a time of very intense transformation. And so the body had to be held together. So if you could imagine like a fishing net of divine grace that sewed together all of the beautiful individual cells and kept them nourished and organized and loved until they could be organized into this new format. So I'm telling you all of this also so that you know that the transition is a process. It was not a wave your magic wand, turn on a light switch, immediate change. It was a process. And that even in my development over the past 15 years, because I came here in 2001, like on October 8th, so it was right in the wake of the events of 9/11. And that's also part of why the previous occupant of this body was being sacrificed. And this is all now relevant. When I've been describing my story over the past 15 years, I would say that I was attacked by a satanic or evil being. And when I say satanic, I am referring not to anything, any definition that comes out of the Bible or biblical literalism. I'm referring to an actual space race, a group of extraterrestrials who utilize a form of technology that is not the same type of technology that we use on Earth, terrestrial technology, which is based on electrons flowing in a wire. Satanic technology would be described as magic or dark magic on Earth's surface. And it is run by the trapped and victimized or distorted human consciousness of the victims that have been either ritually sexually abused or ritually tortured or ritually murdered. So when an experiencer of abuse, and like we can call people victims, however, I'm trying to find a more empowering term than victim, but when the person who's been abused, when that happens, it changes the trajectory of consciousness through time. And it makes that person, if they were flying on a particular timeline, if I were drawing in my studio, I'd draw a timeline, it diverts that trajectory onto a different timeline. And calculating the difference between where you were going and where you are now going is the amount of energy that is siphoned off from the time stream that is used to feed dark magic. And dark magic, or this malevolent extraterrestrial technology, is used to distort the time field. It is used to make things happen that wouldn't ordinarily happen or wouldn't naturally happen. So I've described this so many times. If I'm hitting one of your favorite songs that I've done many, many times before, please forgive me or applaud me, because we are like musicians in a giant cosmic symphony. And this analogy really holds, that we are all musicians and our bodies are our instruments, and we are all playing this beautiful music in time to the great cosmic conductor who is working from the musical score written by the great cosmic composer. And when you conform to that cosmic score, you essentially get to live forever. You do not have entropy. You do not dissipate your energy. You don't lose your energy. It's like being part of a perpetual motion, endless flow, endless trajectory of consciousness. And that's what divinity intended for us. That's what the person who structured all of this and created reality made it to run forever. Our bodies were not made to live 100 years if you're lucky. And they were not made to become further, like when you're 10 years old, you're pretty healthy. When you're 20 years old, you're 10 years less healthy. You're not made to degrade every decade until by the time, you're 60 or 70 or 80 where you are bent over walking with a cane. That is not how our bodies were intended to exist. We were intended to exist in a constant rapport with higher consciousness or the stellar network. And the stellar network is pure energy. It's that pure music of the cosmos. And when you exist in that level of rapport, you don't need technology. So right now, you and I, the bodies that we're living in, these are the domesticated human form. We are not in our undomesticated, or most of us are not in our undomesticated bodies, which would be like if a domesticated dog came from a wolf. What did the domesticated human come from? And we came from what would be considered like a magical creature, a creature that lived in the time known as the mythological, time of Atlantis, that needed nothing more than pure sunlight. We all ate nothing but pure sunlight. And our bodies didn't degrade in 100 years, and we lived in health and vitality and, cellular structure continually renewing itself, essentially for as long as we wished to. So that could be hundreds or thousands of years. And in that culture, when a person was complete with their life experience in the body, they didn't have to become sick and then have their body degrade and then die horribly in suffering and in pain. They ascended. And this is much more similar to some of the stories of masters like Lao Tzu, the founder of Taoism, or some of the stories out of the Bible where a person just transcends reality, where you don't necessarily have to physically die and have blood pour out of your throat and then your consciousness or spirit is able to flow on its trajectory, but where instead the physical matter of the body is kindled into a higher dimensional format, like the way that fire is fueled by the logs in the fire. Imagine like a form of quote-unquote spontaneous human combustion, but it's not combustion. Combustion means changing state. When you put a log in a fire, you are changing its state from solid into superheated gases and plasma, and that's what plasma is, the light that the flame is made from. So the idea is, in the ancient Atlantis world, consciousness was released through a transformation process, very similar to what is now cultivated, by Tibetan Buddhists in the Far East, an inner transformation where you bypass the physical decomposition of death. So you can check out this book. It is called Rainbow Painting. It is available on Amazon, and it was written as like a compilation of these different stories of Buddhists from the Far East who did what they say is called achieving the rainbow body. And it was a very interesting little book that literally jumped off the shelf to me when I was visiting a monastery in Woodstock, so I pass it along to you. It has a lot of interesting, inspiring stories, some from the 20th century, some from many hundreds of years ago that were passed down through, mythological generation stories about people who meditated heartily and performed these inner transformations until at the end of their life they didn't die and leave behind a stinking corpse. They left behind either nothing, or relics that didn't decompose, or tiny doll-like structures that seem to have magical powers. So this is the idea that we can redefine what death is. If I were in my studio with you, I'd draw a picture of the time vortex, and the boundary or the edge of that vortex is a flowing membrane that I call the flowing membrane of death. And this is not a membrane that we are actually supposed to ever have to touch or occupy or interact with. That was not part of the original design of the cosmos. But because humanity was degraded between 10 and 20,000 years ago, this genetic structure of the body was degraded, and humans couldn't see through time anymore. Now, I say this to you now, you're like, well, that sounds like a very superhuman ability. Like, to see through time, this is considered to be the minimum of what you are supposed to have. Being submerged in time and not being able to see through time means you're flying completely blind. The idea that you cannot actually sense what is coming in your future is very concerning, because we are all meant to be able to consciously navigate the time field and see what is coming in our future. And we do that with our higher faculties. So the higher faculties are everything that balances upon the fulcrum of the level of green or unconditional love at the level of your chest, in your body, with your chakras or energy centers, that upon unconditional love, there rests the apparatus that is your throat, which is truth and communication, and your brow, which is insight or pure perception, and your crown, which is your connection to higher consciousness. And when all of those aspects of anatomy are balanced and they're functioning properly, it's like your heart and your lungs and your muscles are all nice and fit and they're all working together, and it means that you are a strong, healthy athlete. So when all of those apparatuses are working together, it means you can perceive time, that you have the heart makes the energy, like the gas that makes your car go, and your brow that's also associated with Christ consciousness. But Christ consciousness is not synonymous with the Christian religion on Earth's surface right now. And I really have to point this out, again, not like some kind of external entity that came to your religion, it came to your planet rather, and is willing to cast aspersions upon your earthly religions. I am not here to mock and ridicule you. That's not what this is about. This is really about, I am trying to give you like an outsider viewpoint and give you all of the tools and insights and perceptions that are necessary for freedom, because Earth's surface religions were literally manufactured as control systems for your mind, and they also relate to the limitations that are woven into you on a genetic level. And the flying rainbow lasagna shape is about unlocking your own genes. You know, I would give you a pencil with an eraser in my presence in my studio and say, here, this is like the flying rainbow lasagna, a pencil with an eraser for your genes, where you can take whatever is the rough sketch that your ancestors and society and culture gave to you and erase out what you don't wish to be there and instead write in what you do wish to be there. And that is true freedom. And so with that, when I say you get to add an additional dimension and add an additional degree of freedom, that's the additional degree of freedom that I'm speaking about. This is what gives humanity freedom to now navigate through time. So it's not just like, oh, I'm driving down a road and now my eyes are finally open and because I have my higher faculties and I can see what's down the road and oh, look, we're about to smash into a brick wall. How much fun is that? It's actually being able to perceive and have your hands on the steering wheel and the gas pedal and the brake and actually control your vehicle through time. Not just being a passenger along for the ride, which is, I think, how a lot of religious programming encourages that passivity, calling it, you know, trust in like a higher externalized God. And really the next level of evolution that each one of us is perched upon or ascending to as we make this transition is the idea of embodying God. Now, I am totally aware that there are all sorts of religious programs when I start to say to you, like, go away from church-based religion and embrace your own inner divinity. All of those programs rear their ugly head and they say, don't change, don't listen to Aurora. Aurora is clearly of the devil. She is speaking like a Luciferian worshiper, saying that God is within. And again, I'm not a Lucifer worshiper. I'm not a Satanist. I'm not a transhumanist agenda person at all. I'm actually here with a something that I'm sharing freely with everyone. A tool. The Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a tool that I'm sharing with everyone. I'm not taking prisoners. I'm not requiring that you pay me directly like a monthly subscription fee so that you can use the Flying Rainbow Lasagna on your own genes. I'm not doing anything like that. So I hope that my behavior is expressing the truth of my agenda, that my agenda is about freedom for all. That is my real value system. It is based in the fuel is unconditional love. That's what makes this vessel go. And the intention is freedom for all. So if I was like some other organisms, I'd be like, oh yeah, I believe in freedom. Freedom for me to rape and pillage and oppress and do whatever I want to anyone else and escape the karmic consequences or, you know, the negative repercussions. We'll just defer that for thousands or tens of thousands or billions of years if I want to. That's not who or what I am. I am really much more interested in collaborating. I'm like a musician, and I've been playing in my own garage and practicing my own skills and my own riffs, and I am looking for other musicians to play with in the band. And I don't find it totally fun and fulfilling to just play on my own in the garage. It's a lot more fun when you have other musicians to bounce your notes off of and to listen to their notes, and everybody collaborates. So that is really my motivation. Why do I share the Flying Rainbow Lasagna? I could have kept it as my own proprietary secret. However, I'm literally telling everyone about it in any way that I possibly can. Like, that is why I make my artwork. That is why, I should tell you a little bit more about becoming articulate. So, it took many years. I used to just try to explain to people what my art was at art shows. I sometimes, maybe got through a little bit. Eventually, I got my own TV show on Channel 23 back in Woodstock, New York. It's where I emanate from in this body. Channel 23, quote unquote, where anyone can be a star. It's public access. So I got this late night public access show, and I would just go on there thinking, like, no one's probably watching this, and I'm just going to talk about the flying rainbow lasagna and, tell everyone about it as much as I can. And through doing that show for a couple of years, I got a lot better at speaking extemporaneously and choosing the words that I wanted to and finding analogies that would work and being able to describe these concepts. And eventually what I did was I got, with better computer equipment and everything like that, an interactive whiteboard for my tablet, and I started to record formal lessons. This was in 2013. So again, I came in 2001, so it's been a long journey for me to get to this level of inner self-organization so that I could share it with others in a comprehensive way. So I actually started to record, half-hour lessons that lead up to the concept of the flying rainbow lasagna. And all of this was the genesis of Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And you can still find that and access those lessons. Go to my website, flyingrainbowlasagna.com is the best way to check out all these things. There you will find all sorts of fun things to look at, including artwork and videos and a link to Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. And you can also check out my links, have a YouTube channel where I also have a lot of recorded material. And the reason for that is, again, I enjoy speaking on the radio in order to share these concepts with everyone, and it's even better. You get another dimension of understanding when I'm able to use sculptures and animations and visual diagrams to really depict these concepts. And then, of course, a couple of years ago, I started doing this radio show on a weekly basis, and that definitely has made me improve my verbal skills so that I can share, these are images that I have inside of my mind, like on my mental movie screen, and to be able to describe what I'm seeing internally with words, like that is a stretch, that is a challenge. Part of it is neurological deficit, and part of it is, language itself is a virus and is a non-natural form for communication. And our human operating system, the human mind, quote unquote, is hacked. And so we're using this hacked operating system and this virus of language, rather, in order to try to share real concepts that are on the level of unconditional love and above. And that's a real challenge. This is how we can understand, like, sometimes people have profound insights, either in a dream state, in a psychedelic state, in a visionary state. And when they try to put those conceptions into words, it almost always loses some of the brilliance, or it tarnishes it or flattens it out a little bit. And that is simply because words add another layer of distortion. It's like moving down the ladder instead of moving up the ladder to pure insight, which is really, that is how humans in their non-domesticated form communicate. So as domesticated humans without higher faculties, you don't eat sunlight, you smash up food with your moving mouth parts and put it in the cauldron of your belly and digest it and poop it out and communicate with the flapping of your moving mouth parts. And there's very little telepathy or direct mind-to-mind communication here. And so part of it is genetic degradation, but part of it is also environmental pollution. And the pollution is not just in the form of chemical or particulate contaminants. It is also pollution of the waves, the realm of pure frequency. So it's not just radio waves or microwaves, it's any of the electromagnetic fields that are artificial, that are being created by either unshielded electrons flowing in a wire, or that are being created as part of the Wi-Fi network and other various broadcasts of information. That these broadcast towers actually inhibit your natural field. They actually inhibit the growth or cultivation of your natural telepathy. When I lived in Woodstock from 2004, 2005, and a little bit into 2006, that was like a little bubble in the world that did not yet have cell phone service. And we used to laugh at other people who came to visit our little village and tried to use their cell phones. We're walking around looking at the sky, trying to get a signal. We're like, ha, 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 we live in a magic little town. Your cell phones don't work here. And at that point, we mostly used telepathy. If you wanted to find a friend, you would think about your friend and wonder, maybe they're over here, maybe they're hanging out over here, and you would go and find them. And I experienced so many wonderful adventures filled with, magical synchronicities, just being led by my inner guidance and my telepathy. And, everything always really worked out. It was quite magical. And as soon as the cell phone tower came to our town and started to blanket us with rays that allowed us to use artificial means for communicating with one another, it wasn't just the convenience. It wasn't just like, oh, now I can call my friend anytime. It was really a diminishing of that natural broadcasting system in favor of the technological broadcasting system. And if I haven't already described it in this broadcast of the day, on other broadcasts I've described extensively how true experts, like the true experts of non-terrestrial consciousness, don't need any form of technology. They don't need any accoutrements beyond, their birthday suit and the energy of the cosmos. And that's why I say to you, I'm not a transhumanist. I really advocate that anything that we need to do with our bodies, including space travel, can be done without technology. And that if you need technology, like as your training wheels or like to get a leg up in order to compensate and do a thing, you're probably not supposed to be able to do that thing. So if astronauts need a clank metal spaceship to fly off the surface of Earth and they got to live in a metal spacesuit and eat out of a toothpaste tube and poop in a diaper, that it means you're not advanced enough to jump off the surface of your planet because you're not prepared for how are you going to interact with beings that live on other planets or don't live on other planets, like not prepared for your feet are going to touch another world. Are you going to squash something with your foot? Like there is no sensitivity there. And so all of these are like safety mechanisms that the cosmos programmed in order to prevent consciousness infections from spreading. Like this consciousness is supposed to be stuck on its planet until it's ready to go. It's not right yet. It's not refined enough yet. It's not sophisticated or mature enough yet to know how to go to another planet and not squash a bunch of people because it's putting its foot in the wrong place. So these are inborn mechanisms or like safety features of the cosmos. But clearly, we are perceiving that there are extraterrestrials who use technology, and they've used technology for millennia, for thousands of years, for millions of years. Earth is not the first place that they've come to, and these beings have been involved with human history for, at least 10 or 20,000 years. But the time of Atlantis was a sophisticated time when humans here interacted with beings from all over the cosmos, like all different timelines, different galaxies, different places. However, mostly it was done not through this form of technology. And that when this technology came to our planet, that is the primary trauma that we're all hoping and working for healing for right now in this moment. The good news is you don't have to wait. You don't have to wait many, many years or in your next lifetime. You don't have to die and be born into the next body where you can finally be free. This is the generation right now where you can transform with your pencil, with an eraser, whatever is your present level of genetic organization into a new format. And the new format, the flying rainbow lasagna, is the tool that allows you to get into that new format. And now all of a sudden you get to have a lot more freedom and latitude in time. You get to connect with beings that lived a long time ago or beings that will live in a very long time, or you can now finally effectively talk with beings that live in distant star positions, locations in space. Because if you had to go just by a linear broadcast, it would take billions of years to receive those light transmissions or, thought transmissions. But if you can fold time and space, then when you send out your initial query, hello, I'd like to talk to you, they actually receive it before their entire civilization is extinct, and they can actually respond back to you in an appropriate time scale so that you are not extinct and you can actually have a real-time conversation. And all of this is about achieving like a totality or a unity consciousness, not a totalitarianism, not fascism. Humans living on Earth right now are rightly skeptical of anything that says, oh yes, join the Borg, it'll be wonderful, it's pure bliss. Like, no, because you're all exposed to tons of hive mind, fascism, the type of things on Earth that are done that are very oppressive. They are restrictive to your individuality. They are not based in freedom. So I'm connected to a collective of consciousnesses that are not terrestrial, but we are all based in freedom. So I don't lose my own individuality. I don't lose my own freedom or my own willpower or my capacity to express myself because I join with this collective. And that is the ideal way you want to do it. You don't want to have to stop being who you are and become a slave to an overarching master. So the main points that I want to keep harping on, or affirming over and over, are that the extraterrestrial technology that is being used is an aberration, a thing that should not exist. Just like death, I've described death in our own experience, biological and planetary, is also an aberration. And these two things are connected because before those technology users came to our planet and harmed our genetic code, there was no death on Earth. Everybody ascended. And it was when these technology users came to our planet that they degraded the human form and made it so that you couldn't see when you were going to crash into a brick wall. Or if you could sense the brick wall, you did not have your hands on the steering wheel. And that's like your will. Willpower is connected to DNA. And that is also, that healthy functioning mechanism is also connected to planetary stability, to the Earth's axis, Earth's energy centers, Earth's weather patterns, Earth's earthquakes or lack thereof, that when humans are enslaved and victimized, and when you can't do what you really want to do with your bodies in time, that affects the whole planet. That shakes the whole planet out of its comfortable, healthy, harmonious functioning patterns and puts it into disharmony. And this is I don't know if any of you can even remember a time in your life before you were scheduled and before you had to do certain things at a certain time, like going to school or going to work or brushing your teeth or pleasing mommy and daddy. But there once must have been a time when you were not structured in your scheduling of your activities, or if you ever had a time to just be purely on vacation with no responsibilities, with no structures and no clocks, or maybe camping out or something like that. The whole idea is we behave differently when we follow our natural impulses that are not about controlling us because we have to rise to some responsibility and serve some mundane master in time. Like everybody, your alarm clock goes off and you have to get up and you have to go to school. But if you didn't have to do those things, how would you actually be behaving? So everyone here pretty much, in order to conform to society and earn money, has some level of distortion in not following their own natural scheduling, but instead allowing society to structure and direct your actions throughout the day, school, work, or even, just in very simple ways, like if you need to go to the post office, even if you don't have a normal life schedule, they have a schedule and you can't go there at 5:15 and expect to mail your letter. Like, these are the limitations of being submerged within this social and cultural context. And all of that is unnatural. Like, that is not natural. If we look at our wild, undomesticated format, we would not have a master or a boss telling us what to do. Like, the domesticated dog has a master or an owner, and the domesticated dog has been genetically engineered to require pats on the head or affirmations or the word good dog, the reward of knowing that you have behaviorally done what your master wants you to do. So the domesticated human conforms to certain social structures in time, and if you do it right, you receive money that you can use to buy your food and keep on being alive. And if you don't conform and if you don't do the right behaviors at the right time, then you don't get your money and you don't get to eat and you don't get to be alive. How different that is from the wild animal that doesn't ask its master, am I allowed to hunt now? Am I allowed to eat now? Literally, dogs have been bred not to eat what they hunt. You're supposed to just go over there and get the duck that the human shot out of the sky, not actually eat the duck. You're only supposed to bring it to your human master. So humans have been designed genetically not to be free in time, not to simply go around doing with your mind and and your body and your spirituality, whatever you want in time. Your actions have been controlled, and you are controlled in order to serve your master. And the master is human society, the human economy, human religion, and basically the structure of, right now it's the capitalist economy, but in other, it can be a different economic structure, but it's the same thing. It is that the sense that you need to do your actions are controlled by your need for resources. And if you were truly undomesticated and free, you would be able to receive all of the resources that you needed without having to listen to an externalized master. And perhaps the domesticated portion of your being says, but Aurora, how could any of that possibly work? Like, no one would want to actually do anything. No one would want to do anything harmful or difficult or sweaty. Everyone would want to sit on a beach all day and do nothing. And, we know that that's not truthful, because I can look at the examples of many people who do things that would be considered like for their hobby or as an avocation, something that they do not get paid for, but that can be difficult, dirty, dangerous, physically uncomfortable, and even expensive. And I can point to examples of people who are activists, who put themselves in harm's way, or who look to, like people who go to a bad neighborhood at night, and they try to find people who are at risk or vulnerable and help them, and bring them to a place where they can get food and shelter and not take substances to abuse. Like, this is the whole idea that humans have, as part of their innate structure, this, I want to call it like your own boss inside, like a self-structure that you know what you're supposed to be doing. So in our society, not everybody follows that inner structure. Like, that's your inner divinity. That's your connection to the divine that is telling you what timeline you need to be on. So a lot of, like, if a person is a volunteer or an activist that is, exposing themselves to moderate danger to help others, they're clearly not doing it for the profit motive. They're clearly not being paid for it. It even costs them money to do it. They are doing it because of that inner directive. And this is very similar also to an artist or a musician. I'm not talking about big pop stars or fake artists. A lot of the people that you see in museums right now are fake artists. I won't name anyone by names because I'm just not like that. But let's say there's a lot of people who are motivated purely by profit and not by process. So I'm referring, when I talk about artists and musicians, people who are creative and who follow their inner directive. And, if you know how much it costs, like a guitar and other equipment to make music, it costs money. And, my artwork, the paints and the panels and renting studio space, all of that costs money. And I understand in this time and place, some artists, some musicians are just motivated by money. They just want to make a crappy pop song and get it on the radio and, gyrate on a stage and have income. And some artists are the same way. They'll pander or they'll paint for the market, like, oh, what's cool this season? Red, the color red is in. I'm doing a whole series in red. But real artists, real musicians aren't that way. They are following their inner directive, and they're expressing something truthful that comes from inside of them. That's the closest thing to being undomesticated in this world. And you can tell by the way that society is structured, the phrase starving artist, like people who often choose to follow their inner directive as opposed to conform to social expectations, often don't have money because you don't get rewarded by your master. You don't get patted on the head and hear good dog unless you actually do what your master wants you to do. So the Flying Rainbow Lasagna is a tool that you can use to change your genes back into a non-domesticated or undomesticated format, where instead of your master being a social externalized master, a boss, or a religious figure, or a political figure, or mommy or daddy, because a lot of these social programs are handed down from your immediate, previous generation, your immediate predecessors, your parental generation. So they are the ones who were mostly involved in giving you your basic social program, and they probably instilled that basic domestication program that if you want money, you get a job. Like, they probably did not tell you, like, oh, if you want money, you should be an independent artist and don't paint for the market. Like that. They would probably tell you that that is not an effective approach to life and society. Okay, so that the whole reason for that is that each one of us in each generation has to be completely unique and individual and not just listen to the previous generation. So if this is like the seeds being passed down from a previous generation, if we're like a meadow of grass, and the previous generation grew up during a time when it was a drought, they put into their genes, into the seeds for the next year, the concept of saving water. Always save your water, there's a drought. But the next year there isn't a drought, and the next generation grows up, and it has inside of it on a genetic level the mandate, save water, there's going to be a drought. But you look around and you're like, there's plenty of rain. This mandate does not make sense. I have to do what is right for me now. So in previous generations, it might have been a correct or appropriate approach to, conform to the industrialized world and get a job and live in an urban environment. However, we are at the end of that path. It is not a sustainable path. So if that ever was a viable or effective way to get all of the resources that a person needs in this time and place, that's no longer viable or effective. We have a different context, just like the grass seed has a different weather pattern this year. So we are no longer in the weather pattern that can sustain rampant capitalism and, let's say, just taking and acquiring resources from the natural world. That the past couple of hundred years have been a very unnatural state of distortion where resources were taken out of the world and that was used to fuel the economy, but that cannot continue unabated at that pace. So now we have to do something different in this generation. So the basic answer is collaboration. Like, we need to get out of this mental level that is programmed for competition. That actually comes from, hundreds of years ago, and it's not appropriate to our present level of development. That if we continue on with competition and consider that to be necessary for innovation, necessary for thriving, that's like part of the idea behind capitalism. Like, you get all these different companies and they fight against each other, and then the best one ends up being victorious. But clearly that's not truthful. Clearly the best products that do not necessarily make it to your store shelves in a world of pure capitalism. Sometimes it's just the most cutthroat person, or the person who has the best marketing and advertising team, the person who is most willing to knock off the competition. Bill Gates and Microsoft got to be so powerful and monolithic as a programming company because they were the ones that were willing to knock off the competition. Like, they were ruthless. They didn't allow anyone to get inside of their territory, and that is how they got like that, like a stranglehold. So it's not necessarily the best software programs. A lot of people hate Windows 10, but it is ubiquitous because they have a stranglehold, because they kicked out all the competition. So the next level that we need to aspire to is one that is based in collaboration. And this is what I'm talking about. Being a musician, playing in your own garage or in your own living room is like only a certain level of fulfillment. And that in order to be really fulfilled, you gotta find other musicians to collaborate with, because other people come up with new things that you might not have thought of, or they will hear what you send out in a new way and respond to it. All of these wonderful new combinations and iterations happen when you add a new variable. And so we as humans have been taught that it is correct and right and appropriate for us to constantly compete with one another, and that has prevented us from being able to work together and collaborate on a certain level for social projects, economic growth and economic projects, and even spiritual projects. That humans right now in this time and place are not working together for collaborative spiritual advancement, even though we all should be. Like, that is like the real thing. That's the music that we are all collaborating upon right now. So the way this cosmic symphony happens, the way that this is structured, it is not by having one human messiah-shaped band leader that stands in front of everyone and says, like, listen to me, this is the beat, like, play on the beat, I'm doing it. The band comes together because each one of us as musicians becomes musically literate. That means we can read the musical score of the cosmos. So this requires cultivating the higher faculties. when you have your brow chakra connected to your crown chakra, connected to the divine, the stellar network, that is how you see the patterns of time. That navigating the time field is meant to be like being musically literate. When you're a musician in the symphony, you don't have to guess, like, is it a C? Is the next note? Is it an E? Is it a D flat? I don't know. I'm going to just figure it out. Play by ear. It's not like that. You look at the musical score and you can tell, I know the next note that's coming. I know the next note that's coming. I know when we're going to rest, and I know when we're going to play. That is what it is like when you cultivate your higher faculties and you can see through time. It is a living, breathing, three-dimensional time embroidery sculpture, and it is constantly moving. It's what our DNA is connected to. So tuning your own instrument, your strings of your DNA are part of your own instrument, and learning to play your own instrument is necessary and the journey to becoming part of the cosmic symphony. Like, it is how you audition. It's how you get the gig. You have to have your own body in tune and be playing the right music, and then you can integrate with the rest of the symphony in a beautiful, harmonious structure. So real experts do star travel in giant collectives of consciousness, or giant ships or vessels that are made of music. They're made of strings of energy and strings of time that are pulsing and twisting and dancing in these beautiful shapes and in these beautiful patterns. And it is like a perpetual motion machine in that there is not entropy. So once this apparatus or engine gets going, it is able to sustain itself. And this is the whole idea of like a giant cosmic symphony, a whole big beautiful band. And just like in your body, you have individuation of your different cells. Like a bone cell is different than your heart cell. You don't just have one type of cell, you have specialization. It's the same thing in the cosmic symphony. That's why each one of us is supposed to follow the inner directive. I cannot tell all of you to be exactly like me. That's not right. We don't need 10 million carbon copies of me in the symphony. That's the whole point. Not just being alone and not just being cloned. We need to have variety, individuality, and each person is meant to be self-directed. How can this be? How can you be self-directed and not have this just devolve into, chaos or anarchy or, any word that means disorganization? And the real answer is that it's just like in your body. Your body has all of these trillions of individual cells that all work together because they are held together by a community of consciousness. So a cell has its individuated consciousness, and the cell is connected to the consciousness of the larger body. And that is what we are practicing towards and beginning to embody on the non-physical level. I mean, on the physical level too. We do this by dilating our identity. Like, you're not just this one individuated human, you're all humans. And you're not just one organic, multicellular person that lives on the planet. You're the entire biosphere. Because you've got microorganisms on your skin and throughout your digestive tract. And if you don't have food to eat from the environment, you can't stay alive. So we begin to dilate our personality in order to encompass our context. And then recognize that this is all part of collaboration and working together. So the shift from competition to collaboration, it's a shift of perception. It's a shift of belief system and values. It's not necessarily like you have to throw out all your old clothes and buy a new set of clothes because, you lost or gained weight. It is like you have a new approach to life. You have a new viewpoint. So I'm also trying to get across the idea that we don't have to discard our present planet. You don't have to throw away your physical body. You don't have to throw away physical earth, like disposable earth, and then get a new body. Like you get born into a new body or you get a new earth. That whole idea of new earth, that comes from the book of Revelation. And that is like one moldy old prophecy that was written, about 2,000 years ago. And since the invention of the flying rainbow lasagna, all of these prophecies are no longer relevant. The flying rainbow lasagna is like an infinite improbability drive, or the big red button. Just when you press that, anything can happen. And prophecies are saying these are the things that are going to happen in the future. unless someone presses the big red button and rearranges reality. And we have been rearranging reality for 15 years. Anything that is an old prophecy, Nostradamus, the Bible, all of that stuff, anything that's old is not appropriate. It is not a map that you can use in order to drive on this landscape, because the landscape has changed. All right? So what you need to do is open up your own higher faculties and not go by a map and go by what your senses tell you. Like your senses tell you, I'm on the right road or I'm not on the right road. And I think someone asked me recently, and I'm going to reiterate it here, to answer this question. They were like, you speak a lot about the flying rainbow lasagna, but how do we actually do it? And I am not being coy at all when I tell you that it is not something that you can learn or master just by listening to me speak about it on the radio. That this radio broadcast is meant to inspire people to do their own self-cultivation. Just like if I were here talking about running, like the sport of running, and telling you about my passion for it and what shoes I like and how I hold my feet when I'm running. However, right now we are not running, and that just flapping my moving mouth parts does not build my gluteus maximus at all. It doesn't really help to give me the muscles that I need to do this. So these broadcasts are meant to inspire each one of us to do the actual work of self-cultivation. The actual work is not verbal. It is not about talking. It is more about either being in a non-verbal state or being in a state of higher perception that I describe as like when an athlete is in the zone, or when you're a musician and you know a song and you're playing it and it's coming out beautifully, or when I'm an artist and I'm painting my painting and I'm flowing, I know exactly what I need to paint next. When you're in your zone, when you're in bliss, that is when you are following your inner directive. That is when you know you're on the right timeline. That really bliss is like your feedback from the cosmos that tells you you're doing the right activities at each moment in the day. And mostly in this time and place, humans are not allowed to follow their bliss, quote unquote. That's from Joseph Campbell. The idea is that you have a boss or a mommy or a daddy or a teacher or a clock, an inner scheduling mechanism that tells you now you have to do this and now you have to do this, and that it's considered like some kind of indulgent luxury to follow your bliss. And I'm telling you that's not an indulgent luxury. That is how you really survive. That really all of this idea of selling your time in order to get a small amount of money, that's what it is. When you work on a job, you get paid by the hour. Say my hour is worth $10 or my hour is worth $17.50, and that is how much you get for the hour. And what it also means is that you're not on the timeline you would have been on if you hadn't chosen to do that work for that amount of money. So it's not just like you're getting $10 for an hour. You're being paid $10 in order to willingly distort your own time field and do something that you would not have ordinarily done without $10. And at the end of that hour, hey, you've got $10 that you wouldn't have had otherwise, but you also didn't perform the correct actions and thoughts and have the right feelings or send out the right energy to other people that you were supposed to during that hour. And now I want you to multiply that hour times 8, because that's your whole workday, 8 hours a day, and now multiply that times 5. That your whole entire workday, your whole entire work week is essentially society paying you to voluntarily distort your own time field instead of doing what your own inner directive tells you are supposed to do. And no, society would not crumble if we moved on into a different structure of resources and rewards, because clearly some people do things without the expectation of profit or reward. They do it just to do it. And that this is really, the real genius would be putting everybody in their right place, that they're doing exactly what they would enjoy doing and making sure that they have abundance and, money or resources from doing it. So the person who voluntarily reaches out, like for helping to get people off of the streets or out of homelessness, that person should be paid in an actual salaried position to do that work. I also have been seeing a lot of citizen journalists and citizen researchers lately, and I applaud you. A lot of people are researching Pizzagate or other stories that mainstream media is being censored from reporting upon or investigating, essentially. So all the people that are doing independent research in another world, they would act in a non-satanic, non-corrupt world, they would actually have jobs at newspapers and they would actually be paid for all of the energy that they're doing. But right now we're in a backwards world where people who are doing what they actually believe in what they actually need to do based on their inner directive are not being paid for it. So just I want to say, like, stay the course. I want to give you like a pathetic palliative phrase that is like, there, dear, everything's going to be okay. This is a very wrong situation. I don't just want to placate you, but I do want to tell you that we are moving out of this level of reality and out of this situation and into the world where when you follow your inner directive, you will be rewarded. And this is very different because everyone here has been in the world of domesticated slaves. If you're a dog and you act like a wolf, your master will beat you, okay? If you're an artist and you live in this world where you're supposed to have a job and be a slave, your master will beat you. But we are moving out of this level of domestication. That is the whole point. We are moving into levels of freedom where it is totally appropriate to act like an undomesticated wolf. Follow your inner directive. Do the things that the divine God inside of you tells you simply must do, even if it seems not rational. Artists paint things and make things that are not rational all the time. You don't know why you're doing it, but you just have to do it. So I encourage you all to cultivate your inner faculties, use the Flying Rainbow Lasagna to connect to your own divinity, to connect to your own inner directive and follow that. Do not follow external authority figures who tell you what to do. And I thank you so much for being with me on this journey because, again, I don't want to just be playing in my garage, my own music in my own head. I want to collaborate with other wonderful musicians that are out here in the world. So thank you to all of the other wonderful musicians that are out here. Let's jam. Let's get together. Let's really play a beautiful song here in this level of reality. Thank you. That is what the birth of the new dimension is. All jamming on this beautiful song. Thank you so much.